I'm Kelley Knickerbocker, and I'm going to moderate this panel discussion about the role, the place of figurative and non-abstract in talking about those terms as well in contemporary mosaic art. And it's a bit ironic that I'm up here because I work entirely in abstract and not figural, representational at all. But actually, it's kind of a wonderful fit because I love these artists and their work, and it's challenging to me, and I have to challenge my own ideas, terminology, usage of words around this topic. And so I'm doing work right along with some of you who will be, kind of trying to get your heads around this as we talk. I am based in Seattle, and I've been working in mosaic for about 10 years, and I have a studio in Seattle, and then I also teach all over the place, mostly abstract. But my focus actually is more how we think and how we see, and then how do we bring that to mosaic. That's more important to me really than, although I'm super into technique and technical integrity and all of that, I really want to convey how we think and how we see and how important that is to whatever medium we're applying it to. So that's kind of my background, and I'm really glad to be up here with all of these lovely people, friends, and colleagues. So let me just introduce them to you again. Lilian, we pretty much got a really amazing introduction to Lilian Broca last night with a documentary and her talk about her two major, powerful series of mosaics over the last 10 years. And Lilian's based in Vancouver, Canada, and she's a lifelong artist, has been featured in over 70 exhibitions, and she's been the subject of several books and obviously a documentary. She's a powerful artist, speaking in many mediums, not limited to mosaic. Drawing, painting, sculpt, she's it. She does it all. And it's about the image, it's about what is that image saying, symbolism, examination of social commentary, all of that is present in her work, which makes mosaic, we're really fortunate to have her as part of our community and be saying all of that stuff now in mosaic, as she has in these other mediums throughout her career. I know I have a computer in front of me, but I hand wrote these because it helps with my memory to have the kinetic activity. Mirai Swinnen has taught mosaic since 2006. She works primarily in Smalti and does a lot of, over the last several years, has been focusing on portraiture and figurative types of work. And so very apropos to have her up here at the table. She's also been in numerous shows and exhibitions all over the world, and she's won the Members' Choice Award at the Society of American Mosaic Artists exhibition in 2015, this year. And she is a vibrant teacher, and looking at her mosaic work, there's so much going on in that work, just like with Lilian. There's so much being said with value, with shape, with spacing, more than just the literal of what you see in front of you. And so that's so informs what we're going to be talking about here. Eric Casteel, right here on my right. He's primarily self-taught. He considers himself an amateur mosaic artist. It's not his primary vocation. He's going to be trouble, I can tell that already. He's in finance and software in his real life, and he does mosaic for the joy of it, and for he has a real fascination with impersonating ancient artworks and having them be almost indistinguishable from ancient works, same techniques, same materials, but putting in or leaving out something that very clearly marks them as modern. So that's sort of his tricksy hobbit secret up here. A longtime CMA member. If you've been hanging around on CMA, you've seen a lot of Eric commentary on forums and that. So we're glad to have him here with us. Carole Choucair, Oueijan, from San Diego, another fine artist in multiple media, similar to Lilian, has done many other mediums besides mosaic. So she brings a lot of background interpretation and study to her mosaic work. A lot of figures, landscapes, plants, just and things rising off the substrates. If you're familiar with Carole's work, you've seen that aspect. That's so fascinating when you see them in person. In photographs, they're flattened out, and then many times in person, you see the mosaic and go, I have no idea that's coming out at me. So fascinating aspects of her work. Again, numerous awards, exhibitions in many countries, and highly respected fine artist. And she won the Juror's Choice Award from the Society of American Mosaic Artists Mosaic Arts International show in 2008. So glad to have her here. And finally, Brooks Tower, who suggested only about 6 minutes ago that perhaps we should all duck down and do sock puppets to get our points across. Connect with the audience. So I think we're going to have some fun up here as well as serious discussion. Brooks is a self-taught mosaic artist, and so the word self-taught, as American mosaic artists, we pretty much are self-taught. We don't have the luxury of starting into a mosaic career when we are 11 years old and becoming, journeyman mosaic practitioners after a 15-year study. We are coming to it from all kinds of ways, backdoor ways. We start to break things and cut things and put them back together, and then we learn about our craft. We go and study with different people. We practice. We test. So American mosaic artists, pretty much, we are the self-taught ones. His specialty is opus sectile. I'll let you go look that up later. But he has beautiful cutting techniques with the stone. He's won several awards from the Society of American Mosaic Artists, including Best in Show in 2007 and technical distinction, and he's popular. And confusing. Those are the two comments that go along with Brooks' name. Fascinating. Numerous exhibitions. He does, most of these artists here up at the table do commission works as well as their own studio practice, some public works as well. So there's a lot of talent here at the table. I would sort of describe Brooks's work as maybe figurative, abstract figurative. It really defies categorization, which is another interesting reason to have him as part of this discussion, because it really goes across that boundary. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to read a short introduction, because if I tried to just all say this, I think I would get it wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and read this intro to what we're going to be discussing, and then we're going to go into some questions about why we're seeing what we're seeing and what really are we seeing. We live in an era where cultures are overlapping, integrating, and diluting one another. Diluting. With the help of the internet, these cultures also erode each other's cultural vocabularies. the aesthetic guidelines of the past, which defined agreed upon styles, seem less valid these days, and art, with a capital A, is all over the place. So if art today can be anything and everything, does the mosaic community still have a responsibility to uphold particular of its attributes, such as contemporary and classical? Do we even agree on those attributes? In the larger art community, contemporary art is divided into two categories: figurative and representational as one category, and abstract. This is a broad generalization. Abstract, which is sometimes used as a synonym for non-representational art and non-objective art, art which has no derivation from figures or objects. But in the mosaic community, the definition of contemporary art often stops with abstract. And the seemingly opposing term, classical, is often used as a catch-all category for figurative style mosaics and those done in traditional old school techniques. And personally, as an artist with no formal training, working exclusively in abstracts, I have to admit to a reflexive tendency to use these terms in exactly this way and not think deeper and go deeper into the definition of why those are what those really are in the larger scheme of things. I find definitions that work for me, and sometimes they are these. So this panel is educational for me as well. An interesting example of this sort of, I don't want to call it a polarization, but just of this category distinctionizing, that's not a word, I just made it up, is that in their solicitations for entries to the 2014 Ravenna Biennale, the International Association of Contemporary Mosaicists appeared to exclude all figurative or representational works from its determinedly abstract focus. But in reality, isn't contemporary art all art made by artists living today and responding to a global environment that is culturally diverse and technologically advancing? Contemporary is work that's happening right now. And are a figurative / representational style and original and challenging concepts really mutually exclusive? I mean, when you look at Lilian's work, Carole's work, Mireille's work, Brooke's work, Eric's work, are they saying nothing? Is there nothing actually being said than just the picture, the pretty picture? This is what we're thinking about and talking about. The human figure has been a central focus in artistic cultures throughout history, and today is no different. The urge to record, invent, and manipulate the human image continues to captivate the attention of artists and inspire the creation of innovative, challenging work. Consider the work of Chuck Close, John Curran, Eric Fischel, Lisa Yuskevich, Odd Nerdrum, Julian Schnabel, Kiki Smith, and Hiroshi Sugimoto, just to name a few. Of course, not to mention the artists on this panel and many of you in the audience. So this exclusivity doesn't seem to exist in the contemporary art exhibited in art museums and in serious art galleries, where we'll find figurative and representational work. And as witnessed by the warm reception of both of Lilian's Esther and Judith series. So where does this seeming abstract bias in contemporary art come from in the mosaic community? That's kind of the question that we want to talk about today. So the first thing I want to do is ask a couple of the panel members to talk a little bit about their experience with this, or how this has affected them, or just give a few comments on personal experience with this, and then we'll open it up for questions. Okay? Eric, you first.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank everybody here. You guys are all great, and all of you out there. And we don't want to kind of dictate to you what we're thinking. We want you to kind of be thinking about this and asking these questions yourself. When I first got the topic, I was in Belgrade with my wife. We had just gotten married, and she's way wiser in the ways of art with the capital A, like you say. So I had to kind of run the topic past her, too. And we had a discussion about what's going on and the idea of contemporary, modern versus traditional. And she works, some of you might know, she works in Orthodox mosaics. She makes big, gigantic mosaics for churches. And they have very specific rules that they have to follow. But even within that framework of those very specific rules, they have a little bit of room to kind of maneuver around. And they consider that modern, even though it's really tightly constrained within the framework of the stuff that she's working on. And so our thought is it kind of boils down to semantics, I mean, the word choice, and maybe it's an opportunity for all of us to kind of say, okay, if we're saying contemporary, let's not just kind of have that abstract bias. I mean, call it what it is, and maybe part of it's kind of educational, I don't know. I brought an example of mine. I think I'm the farthest away from contemporary with being contemporary. Because, like she said, this is a portrait of my wife's hand, and I do everything possible to make it appear ancient. I use a process to patinate it that's not just, I didn't just throw muddy water on this, it's actually fixed on here. And even down to the way that I put the date on the piece is like a museum accession number. So my goal is to kind of confuse everybody and make it think that it's traditional or ancient, except for like one or two little minor idiosyncrasies. Oh, sorry. There you go. So you could almost make an argument that this is not contemporary because I'm trying to follow old school stuff as closely as possible. But still, I mean, by the strict definition, it would still be modern because I'm not dead yet. I think, yeah, checking. And so she had a really good example too. She was like, well, you know, fashion. And I was like, yeah, I know fashion. I get the credit card bills sometimes when we go shopping, you know. But she was saying, well, you know, how the pants with the big bottoms, you know, came back for a few years, you know, from the 70s and stuff. And I was like, oh, yeah. And it's kind of true, even though it came back and it's using an element from the past, they changed a few things. I mean, for example, there weren't silk screen shirts, those god-awful things that people used to wear in the 70s, I guess. And so you're kind of, we're all standing on the shoulders of people that have done stuff before us because none of us are a million years old. So everything's kind of contemporary, really. So the semantics of abstract versus representational, when people are putting together a show, maybe they should kind of say what they mean instead of having just that kind of bias or assumption. That was just kind of our thought, and I don't want to go too long. I just wanted to kind of emphasize what we were talking about and kind of kicking back and forth.
Mirai?
Okay. I do figurative art, I think, because of where I come from. This is not on.
Maybe closer.
Hello? It's not on. Oh, sorry. Hello? So I think I do figurative art because of where I come from. In Belgium, art school is for free. And when you're a young child, after hours, you can go to art classes 10 hours a week for no money at all. And that is what tends to happen. You choose for art, painting, drawing, sculpting, or you go to music classes 10 hours a week and you get that extracurricular. And if you get any form of training in art, it starts out with a pencil and you're drawing a figure. You're making still lifes, you get models, you study the form, you study the shading, and so that kind of builds up into making it as realistic as possible with adding paint later, sculpting, giving the form shape. And I think that's very strongly embedded in me. So that's what I know how to do, and I know how to teach it. And that's probably why I do it. If I could do abstract art, I'd probably be doing that too. But there's another reason is what I want to express in my art is easier for me to express in a figure. I have a hard time giving meaning to my abstract art. It's a choice of materials that I like, a choice of colors that I like, but there's seldom a deeper meaning to it. But when I do a figure, I have a deeper meaning. I have an emotion that goes with that image. For instance, the one that was in Tacoma was a little bird with 4 chicks. For me, that was the strong image of motherhood, which is very important to me. I have 2 adopted children. So always when I do an image, there's a stronger emotion behind it, and that's what I'm trying to bring to the viewer too. When they see this, some people will have that same emotion and recognize what I'm trying to express. The thing that worries me more in this discussion is that why, if in this group of people, if I can see a raise of hands again, who is doing figurative art mainly? Okay, and who is doing abstract? Ah, okay, that's about 50-50, that's great, yeah. Why there is such a strong preference in art galleries, in shows, in juried exhibitions for abstract art? What is making that trend happen? And that is my question to you. That's the discussion that I would like to hear from my side. Thank you.
I want to respond to something Eric said and something I really completely agree with everything you just said. The fashion comment, I've just been thinking about something last night. Hip-hop fashion with the saggy pants. It hasn't followed what the normal fashion trends are for, fashion trends, bell bottoms came in for about 5 years, went away, maybe even shorter than that. Saggy pants have stayed around for what, about 30 years. And it's now diffused into small town farm boys in Oklahoma. And I'm wondering why, when the ultra uncool farm boys are doing it, why the coastal people are still doing it, because it seems like they wouldn't want to be associated with and I find something similar going on with abstract, with non-representational, in that it I guess it came to its epitome maybe and I'm not trained. My only art class was 7th grade art class in Lubbock, Texas. I was the only boy in the art class. All the other boys took shop. So that's my training. But I wonder why maybe in about the 1950s abstract expressionism and it seemed it was at its height, and I don't know if it's because of art schools and people being invested in what they were trained as, and then it is held on so strongly, the bias, and I think it is a bias, although I don't remember specific people saying, to me, your stuff sucks because it's figurative. But on online groups and stuff, the milieu, the expectation is for, if you're really doing serious stuff, you shouldn't be drawing pictures. And I don't understand it, partly because I have the same emotional makeup that you're talking about, that I've done abstract stuff, and then I've attempted to do abstract stuff, and then by the time I start making it, figurative things force their way into it. And even to my own dismay, when I've gone, this is going to be an abstract piece and something, because that's where I get the emotional attachment to it. That's where I get the where I really want to make it. And as hard it is to make mosaic and to do opus sectile, I have to really want to make it, to go through the misery of getting it done. So